Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Mario Cristobal, the Miami Hurricanes wrapping up 2 days of spring practice, and want to take us back to the other day when we were talking about some storylines and questions that we were going to be following for this Hurricanes program during spring practice, and do a little bit of a check-in, talk about what we've been hearing from the spring practice notes. And spring practice inherently kind of difficult to talk about because you talk about the passing attack for this Hurricanes program, obviously looking very good the first 2 days. Very good for the Miami Hurricanes offense. Maybe some question marks we have to be talking about that Hurricanes defensive backroom. Want to get into some storylines, some players that we hear maybe breaking out heading into 2024 before we get into it. And as always, just want to say thank you to you guys. And it truly has been a blast talking this program. Many of the longtime listeners, you guys know how much I love talking about this program. The amount of support you guys show to the boys really does mean a lot. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And without further ado, let's get into this check-in and let's talk about some of the positives that we have coming out of the first 2 days. And that passing attack sounds like it is going to be dangerous in 2024. Now, we did a deep dive into Cam Ward, talked about what he brings to this Hurricanes offense. And one of the reasons I'm getting a lot of flack, I had my ACC rankings, took Miami to win that conference, and I get a lot of pushback from it. And I get it. Mario Cristobal needs to show it on the field. Why am I so optimistic about this program in 2024? It starts and ends with the quarterback play. This is, in my opinion, the most talented roster in the ACC, but I think they have the quarterback now in Cam Ward. Now, a couple of storylines I want to talk about with Cam Ward and how this wide receiver room shakes out. I don't have any questions about Cam Ward. Want to talk about the wide receiver room. First one I want to talk about is Xavier Restrepo, who I feel like just flies under the radar, even according to some Miami Hurricane fans. In my mind, he is one of the best receivers in the country heading into 2024. And you hear a lot of Hurricane fans saying we need to go find a wide receiver one in the transfer portal. I look at this Hurricanes roster and say, you already got one in Xavier Restrepo. Now, is he your prototypical wide receiver number one? No, he's not a boundary guy that is 6'4" and works down the field. But you talk about creating separation, being extremely reliable, being really good after the catch, all those boxes that you want to see checked for a wide receiver you want to run your passing attack through. Xavier Restrepo checks all those boxes. And furthermore, you talk about Cam Ward and what he wants to do. That ball wants to come out quick, on time, accurately. Cam Ward targeted his slot receivers at Washington State way more than any other wide receiver on that roster. I think you're going to see a special connection between Cam Ward and Xavier Restrepo. And again, although maybe not the prototypical wide receiver one, I'm looking at that Hurricane wide receiver and saying, y'all got a wide receiver one in Xavier Restrepo. A couple other guys, JoJo Trader. We're excited about true freshmen. It's hard not to get extremely excited about the new faces coming in from the high school ranks. It sounds like JoJo Trader is that guy in terms of the creating the separation, what he can do after the catch. He is stepping on that spring practice field and fitting right in at the college football level. And I mean, another guy I'll throw out there real quick from reading the spring practice notes, Nikar. And I feel like Nikar, again, maybe flies under the radar because JoJo Trader, probably not the hometown hero, but the hometown guy, obviously the crown jewel of that Miami Hurricanes class. Nikar's a damn good wide receiver too, and I'm extremely excited about both JoJo Trader and Nikar and what they can do potentially pushing some of these veteran boundary receivers like Jacoby George and Isaiah Horton. You talk about how you want a wide receiver room to look. You know what you got. I mean, I think Jacoby George has a lot of meat left on the bone in terms of what he can be. You feel good about Isaiah Horton, a couple of veteran guys that have been with the program. They're going to get pushed by JoJo Trader and Nikar. The passing attack looks really good. I'll shout out Elijah Arroyo, apparently looking healthy, and that's massive. We talked about the need for this wide receiver or this tight end room to get involved more in the passing attack. This tight end room is one of the positions that I'm monitoring the most. Elijah Arroyo, Riley Williams, can one of those guys break out and be, I mean, truly a pass-catching threat in this Hurricanes offense? You look at how Miami wants to run this offense. They want to run the football. They want to establish the line of scrimmage. You're going to see 12 personnel, 2 tight end sets. You got to have your tight ends be able to give you some juice in the passing attack. And Elijah Arroyo potentially looking back to form after the bad injury in 2022. Massive storyline. Next player I want to talk about that, I mean, I'm kind of intrigued with is, I mean, Pancake Concho, Samson Okunlola, a guy that y'all know who've been listening for a while, one of my favorite newcomers last year for this Hurricanes program. I want to talk about this offensive line, and obviously Maui Noah sitting out with an injury right now. Jalen Rivers at left tackle. You got Maui Noah at right tackle. You feel pretty good about that. And that's Cooper at one of the guard spots. Zach Carpenter. I'm hearing a lot of Lou Cristobal as the starting left guard right now for this Hurricanes program. And it sounds like we might see a position battle between Samson Okunlola and Lou Cristobal. And I got to say this, we've seen Lou Cristobal. I don't know how much better he is going to get. And he is not necessarily a guy that I think fits what Miami wants to do on the offensive line. You talk about a guy that is exactly what Miami wants on that offensive line in terms of road grader, establishing the line of scrimmage, moving people off the line. That's Samson Okunlola. And so this suddenly turns into one of those position battles that I'm going to be monitoring closely. Quite frankly, didn't think that it was going to be a position battle. We weren't sure if we were going to see Samson at tackle or at guard. One, I'm happy he's in at guard because you look at, Rivers and France and Maui Noah at tackle spots. You feel really good about those tackle spots. And now you look at a guy like Samson and say, we got to figure out a way to get him on the field. And if that means sticking him at guard in the 2024 season, so be it. And I think Samson Okunlola is going to slot into that left guard spot. I think once the pads come on, I think he's probably going to show going into year two that he is that guy. And again, it's not a knock on Lou Cristobal. Many of you guys know I don't like to come out and just drag players, but you're telling me that Samson Okunlola isn't ready to play over Lou Cristobal. I'm not sure if I'm buying that. So that left guard spot is something that I'm really monitoring. Now, I want to get into probably the biggest question mark you have about this Miami Hurricanes team heading into 2024. And we've said this consistently. You look at this depth chart and say, I don't have many question marks, right? Quarterback play, wide receiver play, offensive line, defensive line. You don't have any question marks about a lot of those positions. The position that I have the most question marks about for this Hurricanes program is exactly where we're hearing kind of maybe some struggles in the first 2 days of spring practice. And that is in that secondary room. Now, I will say Cam Ward, very talented wide receiver room. It is probably going to be hard for a lot of defensive back groups across the country to look good against those wide receivers with Cam Ward in practice. But it is a problem, right? And I just don't think there's a ton of depth in this room. Obviously, some guys sitting out with injuries. I want to talk about what I think this secondary room is going to look like over the next couple of weeks. Now, at the cornerback spot, Damari Brown out with an injury right now. So you're working with really only 4 healthy cornerbacks. It sounds like your starters are Daryl Porter, who I think we know is kind of a dude. We don't have many question marks about Daryl Porter. He's going to be solid for the Hurricanes. On the other side, that's probably where you're going to see that Damari Brown, Jadias Richard battle. And then in the safety spot, I'm really excited about hearing that Xavier Riley has come in and kind of immediately injected himself as a starter for this Hurricanes team in the back end. And that was one of my question marks in terms of, all right, is Xavier Riley a guy that we talked about committing to the Hurricanes, a guy that has all the talent in the world, right? You talk about physical traits that you want in a safety. Xavier Riley has those traits. I think the only knock on him was the inexperience. And the fact that Xavier Riley has already kind of seemingly taken over one of those safety spots, I think is absolutely massive. You talk, talk about Misha Powell playing that nickel role. I wonder what they do with Misha Powell, because when I looked at it, I think Zaquan Patterson could certainly fit into that nickel role, and that's probably one of the bright spots. Is it does sound like Zaquan Patterson certainly coming in and fitting right in with this Hurricanes defensive back room. And you talk about biggest storyline for this Hurricanes program heading into 2024. I think one of them starts with, is Zaquan Patterson ready to come in day one and be a starter for this Hurricanes team in 2024? And I get it's a lot to put on a true freshman, but we said 2 things. One, Zaquan Patterson physically, from a physical standpoint, is ready to play at the college football level. We saw that from his high school film. Now, can he get it between the years? That's a massive conversation. And the other guy I want to talk about really quick is Jadias Richard, who, again, sounds like there are some growing pains. And I think a couple of things to keep in mind. One, he's still a young player. He's only going into year 3 of his college football career, a guy that was recruited out of high school to be a safety. I really like the physical traits. Now, I think the question is, all right, can he put it together? This is another huge player for this Hurricanes team heading into 2024. Can guys like Jedias Richard, Savion Riley, Damari Brown, all young players in this Hurricanes defensive backroom, can they be ready in 2024 to be reliable players in the back end? And that's probably, if I was in Mario Cristobal's ear, or not ear, but in his mind, what I'm saying is he's probably looking at this defensive backroom and saying, what is the progression we see from guys like Savion Riley, like a guy like Jedias Trader, Jedias Richard, excuse me, and a guy like Zaquan Patterson? This is probably the unit. And I look at this depth chart, kind of what we talked about from the top. There is not many holes in this roster. If there is a hole, it is in that defensive back room. If some of these guys maybe don't take the step that some are expecting them to take, this is probably the position that Miami would go out in the transfer portal and go address after spring practice. But it's only 2 practices in. You got 13 more to go and a spring game. So we'll see what the progression looks like from some of these young guys in that defensive back room. Sounds like a pretty exciting first 2 days for the Hurricanes. And if you were to say, hey, what do you want to hear? If you pulled Miami Hurricane fans and said, would you rather have the defense be dominating or that passing attack with Cam Ward dominate? I'm pretty sure 99% of us would say we want to see Cam Ward lighten it up. That sounds like what we're hearing from spring practice. We'll keep you guys updated as the practices roll on, as we hear some more stuff from this Hurricanes program. Appreciate you guys, as always, for rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.